During our ancestors' trip, my daughter-in-law yelled at the auberge receptionist, "Don't allocution to the old woman. She's aloof the help." My son laughed. Little did she apperceive I endemic the place. What I did abutting larboard her trembling. "I'm animated you're here. Stick with me until the end of my story. And let me apperceive what Berg Hall you're watching from so I can see how far it reaches." I had been attractive advanced to this cruise for months. At 72 years old, opportunities to absorb affection time with my son Jay and his ancestors didn't appear about often. Aback he appropriate a week in Miami, my affection swelled with hope. Maybe I could assuredly get a budding to Valentina, my daughter-in-law, who had kept her ambit during the 5 years they'd been married. The 4-hour drive to the Coastal Paradise Resort was filled with Jay and Valentina talking about spa treatments, tea times, and big-ticket dinners, as if I weren't alike there. Every time I approved to accompany in, allurement about the kids or suggesting article we could all do together, Valentina would accord me a abbreviate answer, and Jay would avoid me completely. I should accept apparent the red flags, but I capital so badly to mend our ancestors' band that I didn't care. The Coastal Paradise Resort was one of my greatest achievements, though my ancestors had no idea. Afterwards, my bedmate anesthetized abroad. Aback Jay was aloof 12. I congenital my auberge business from the ground up. I started with 1 baby bed and breakfast, alive 18-hour days, scrubbing floors, and managing reservations. Little by little, I grew it into 17 backdrop beyond 3 states. I consistently kept my business abstracted from my family, absent Jay to adulation me for who I was, not for my money. Arriving at the admirable entrance, a accustomed pride swelled in my chest as I saw the absolute area and the uniformed aide hasty to accost guests. It had taken me 3 years to buy Coastal Paradise, an addition 2 to clean it to perfection. Every detail from the able marble floors to the clear chandeliers was my claimed choice. Jay handed the aide the keys as Valentina adapted her artist's sunglasses, her albino beard altogether styled. She was acutely beautiful, the affectionate of adorableness that comes from big-ticket salons and claimed trainers. At 35 years old, 20 years adolescent than Jay, she fabricated a biting no one forgot it. "Remember," she told him as we approached the doors, "I appetite the penthouse suite. I don't affliction what they say about availability. Aloof accomplish it happen." Jay nodded afterwards hesitation. It still afraid and afflicted me how abundant he deferred to her. The assured boy I had aloft was now a man who couldn't act afterwards his wife's approval. We entered the affected lobby, and I couldn't advise but smile at the familiar fizz of activity. Jasmine, the advanced board manager, looked up, and her eyes widened aback. She saw me, but I gave a slight agitate of my head. I wasn't accessible for them to apperceive who I absolutely was. "Good afternoon," Jasmine said acquiescently but professionally. "Welcome to the Coastal Paradise Resort. How can I advise you?" "Catch below Carter," Jay replied. "We should accept the accommodation suite." Jasmine's fingers flew beyond the keyboard as she checked. "Actuality is your reservation, Mr. Carter. It's accepted for our Coastal Paradise Best Suite, but the accommodation is appointed for your absolute stay." I watched Valentina's face harden, her jaw abbreviating and her eyes glinting with affliction below her absolute makeup. "That's unacceptable," she snapped. "Do you perceive who we are? I specifically requested the accommodation aback we fabricated this reservation." Jasmine remained calm, admitting her shoulders tensed slightly. "I apologize for any misunderstanding, Mrs. Carter. The best accommodation is lovely, and it has a private balcony. I don't appetite to apprehend about some additional amount room," Valentina interrupted, adopting her articulation abundant to accomplish added guests about face and stare. "I appetite the accommodation, and I appetite it now." I took a footfall forward, acquisitive to conciliate the situation. "Valentina, maybe we could—" But before I could finish, she spun on me, her face angled with fury. "Don't you cartel speak?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the marble floors. "Jasmine, or whatever your name is, aloof avoid whatever this old woman says. She's not important. She's aloof the advice we brought with us." The conversations in the antechamber stopped, my cheeks austere as the abasement done over me. But she wasn't done. "Don't allocution to the old woman," she shrieked, pointing at me as if I were an allotment of garbage. "She's aloof the servant, the nanny. Don't decay your time on her." I stood there frozen. My aperture was dry, and my affection formed so hard anticipation it ability access through my ribs. In my 72 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such venom, with such absolute disrespect, and never in advance of strangers. But what came abutting cut even deeper. Jay threw his arch aback and laughed, not an afflictive beam to affluence the tension, but one of genuine amusement, as if watching his wife breach me bottomward inaccessible was the funniest affair he'd any time seen. "Oh my goodness, Valentina," he said, wiping a breach from his eye. "You're terrible, but you're not wrong. Mom, aloof, let us handle this, okay? Go sit bottomward somewhere." The betrayal hit me like a concrete blow. This was my son, the son I aloft alone, who I formed myself to the cartilage for, who I sacrificed aggregate for aloof to give him a acceptable life. And he was bedlam at my humiliation. Jasmine's face had gone pale. A mix of surprise and accord that abandoned fabricated the bite worse. All about the lobby, I heard whispers and saw bodies pointing. Some were captivation up their phones, no agnosticism recording every additional of this mess. "Ma'am," Jasmine said softly, her articulation kind but still professional. "Perhaps you'd like to delay in our lounge while we boldness the allowance situation." Before I could answer, Valentina let out a loud, affected sigh. "Yes. Booty the old woman somewhere she won't abash us anymore. And Accomplish Abiding Edition keeps an eye on her. She tends to get lost." Jay laughed again. Strangers were watching, and I acquainted my affection splintering into actor pieces. I capital to disappear, to run from this admirable lobby, from my atrocious daughter-in-law, from my biting son, and never appear back. But Article Central me, a aftermost vestige of the backbone that had congenital this empire, captivated me firm. I met Jasmine's gaze. Her eyes captivated a silent anguish. She knew absolutely who I was. She knew that with a distinct word from me, she could accept Valentina escorted out so fast her artist heels wouldn't alike blow the ground. But I backward quiet. I best up my small suitcase and absolved to the elevator, my aback beeline admitting the crushing weight of the abashment abaft me. Behind me, Valentina was still babble at Jasmine about the penthouse, her articulation blubbery with the alms of someone who had never formed a day in her life. Aback the elevator doors closed. I bent Jasmine's eye one after most time. She gave me a baby nod, a bashful bulletin that she accepted she was apologetic and she was cat and mouse for my signal. I had congenital this empire from nothing, employing over 300 bodies at my properties. I was respected in business circles, approved out by added auberge owners, accepted for my candor and integrity. But in that lobby, I was just a affecting old woman actuality yelled at by her son's wife, while my son laughed at my pain. As the elevator rose to the 12th floor, anniversary accidental cardinal afflicted Article Central of me. The affliction was still aciculate and deep, but another feeling began to abound beside it. Determination. The abutting morning. I woke up in what should except been paradise, but acquainted added like purgatory. My room overlooked the ocean with after effects acclaim, lapping adjoin the aboriginal beach. The sunrise corrective the sky in shades of blush and gold, colors that would commonly booty my animation away. But I felt empty, as if addition had biconcave me out, and larboard abandoned a shell. I had barely slept. Every time I bankrupt my eyes, I could apprehend Valentina's biting voice. "She's aloof, the help." Jay's action replayed in my arch as I wondered if I could accept handled things differently. Admitting abysmal bottomward, I knew the absolute botheration wasn't my reaction. The accuracy was, my own ancestors advised me like I didn't matter, a bendable beating on the aperture bankrupt through my thoughts. Aback I opened it, Jay was in the hallway. He looked afflictive but showed no adumbration of remorse. "Mom, we're activity to breakfast. Valentina wants you to watch the kids by the basin afterwards, so we can hit the spa." "No." "Good morning." "No." "How did you sleep?" Not alike a nod to what had happened in the lobby. Aloof addition adjustment bearded as a favor. "Jay," I said quietly, "'bout aftermost night." He coiled a duke dismissively. "Mom, don't accomplish a big accord out of it." Valentina was aloof fatigued about the room. "You apperceive how she gets aback, things don't go her way." "A big deal?" That's what he alleged his wife publicly, humiliating me. She alleged me a servant, Jay. She screamed at me in advance of strangers. He shifted, alienated eye contact. She didn't beggarly it. That's just Valentina actuality dramatic. Can we aloof not allocution about it? We're declared to be on vacation. I looked at him, searching for the boy I already knew. The little boy who would ascend into my bed during thunderstorms, who would accompany me dandelions and alarm them sunflowers, who already told me I was the arch actuality in the world. That boy was gone. He had been replaced by a 47-year-old man who chose his wife's abundance over his mother's dignity. "Okay," I said, the babble tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'll watch the kids." His abatement was palpable. "Perfect. We apparently won't be aback all day. Spa first, a fresh lunch, maybe some shopping. That's fine, right?" Of course it wasn't fine. I had absurd this cruise as a time for family, to get to receive my grandchildren and feel like I belonged. Instead, I was actuality bargained to a contributed nanny. But I nodded. A dej no would abandon to count a scene, and I had abstruse connected ago that keeping the accord was added important than speaking up. The dining allowance was abounding with vacationers adequate their meals. Valentina had managed to get a table by the window, the best Adam in the house, and she was already barking orders at the agents as if she endemicked the place. "I appetite fresh squeezed orange juice, not that clutter from concentrate," she told our waiter, a adolescent man alleged Terrell, I remembered from added visits, and accomplish abiding those eggs are adapted absolutely 3 minutes. Not a additional added or less. I could see Terrell aggravating to maintain his composure, but the restriction in his eyes gave him away. I had trained my agents to accommodate best service, but Valentina was testing alike their patience. My grandchildren, Zuri and Deshawn, ages 8 and 10, were sitting silently at the table, eyes alert to their tablets. They about looked up aback I approached. "Good morning, sweetie," I said to Zuri, extensive out to constrict a devious allotment of beard abaft her ear. But Valentina's Duke attempt out, endlessly me. "Don't blow her hair. It was aloof-styled yesterday, and I don't appetite it to get messed up." I pulled my Duke aback as if I'd affected a hot stove. Zuri didn't alike attending up from her screen. "Kids, say acceptable morning to Grandma Renee," Jay mumbled, sounding bored. "Morning," they said in unison, still focused on their devices. I sat in the abandoned actual chair, the one with its back to the resort view. Valentina had fabricated abiding the best seats were for her family, abrogation me the extra one, as if I were an afterthought. "Renee," Valentina said afterwards, attractive at me, "after breakfast you'll booty the kids to the pool. Accomplish abiding, you put sunscreen on them every hour. Zuri burns easily, and if she gets a little bit pink, I'm captivation you responsible." I nodded, burning the words I capital to say, "and accumulate them abroad from the deep end. And don't let them eat candy by the pool. They're abounding of preservatives. Oh, and if they charge anything at all, alarm me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." Anniversary adjustment was like a baby cut. Admonition that she didn't assurance me to affliction for my own grandchildren afterwards, her attractive over my shoulder. "How connected will you be at the spa?" I asked. Valentina finally looked at me, her boring cold. "As connected as we want. This is our vacation, not yours. Your actuality to help." Jay remained silent, staring at his phone, absolutely arrested out. I wondered aback he had become the affectionate of man who would let his wife action his mother like assassin help. Afterwards breakfast, I concluded up at the basin with Zuri and Deshawn, aggravating to Alpha a conversation as they remained absent in their screens. About us. Added families laughed, played, and absolutely enjoyed each other's company. We looked like strangers who aloof happened to allotment a table. "Grandma," Zuri said suddenly, and my affection fluttered. Acquisitive, she capital to talk. "Mom says you acclimated to clean houses for affluent people. Is that true?" The catechism was a bang in the face. I had formed adamantine my absolute life. I had never bankrupted abode for anyone. I had congenital my own authority from scratch. I had created jobs for hundreds of bodies and becoming a count in a maladominated field. And still, in Valentina's askance adaptation of my life, I was annihilation added than a servant. "No, sweetie," I said softly. "I'm a business owner. Anatomy Hotels." Deshawn looked up from his book for the aboriginal time all morning. "Mom says you make up belief about actuality important because you're abashed of actuality poor." The animality of his words blanket my breath. Valentina hadn't aloof ashamed me in public. She had additionally been poisoning my grandchildren to join me, bushing their active with lies so they would see me as a pathetic, delusional woman. "Your grandma is not poor, and she doesn't accomplish up stories," I said, keeping my articulation firm. Zuri aloof shrugged. "That's what Mom says. She says you alive in a tiny accommodation and pretend you're affluent to accomplish yourself feel better. In reality, I lived in an accommodation overlooking the bay that was a count added than best people's absolute net worth. But my grandchildren anticipation, I was the affecting old woman active in ache and lying about my life. For the abutting 6 hours, I sat by that pool, watching accouchement, who about looked at me while their parents enjoyed themselves at my expense. Added guests would babble with me now and then, and I would acknowledge with short, affable answers, all while feeling more and added abandoned with anniversary accidental minute. Aback Jay and Valentina assuredly returned. They were beaming afterwards spa treatments and a big-ticket lunch. Valentina's nails were afresh done, her hair perfect. She looked like Addition who had spent the day actuality pampered, and she had at a spa I endemic with services I was ultimately advantageous for. "How were the kids?" Jay asked without looking up from his phone. "They were fine," I replied. Because what abroad could I say? That they anticipation I was a liar and a servant? That their mother had advisedly destroyed any adventitious of absolute affiliation amid us? "Good," Valentina said dismissively. "You can watch them afresh tomorrow. We accept golf in the morning, and cafeteria with some friends we met at the spa." I watched my son nod forth to her affairs without asking if I cared. Afterwards, cerebration that maybe I capitaled to absorb my vacation accomplishing article added than chargeless childcare. That night, sitting abandoned in my allowance overlooking the ocean, I had worked so adamantine to accomplish my own. I assuredly saw the truth. This wasn't a family vacation. It was a business cruise area I had been casting in the role of the help, except instead of actuality paid, I was footing the bill for the advantage of actuality advised like trash. But as I sat in the dark, alert to the waves crash adjoin the shore, article central me started to shift. The affliction was still there, added than ever. But now it was abutting by article else. Pure, sharp anger, acrimony, at actuality taken for granted, at the lies, at actuality advised. Like I was nothing aback, I had congenital everything. As of tomorrow, I absolutely things were going to change. The third day of our vacation started aloof like the first two, with Valentina dictating my agitation account while Jay sat by, comatose along like a adjustable assistant. This time they had a day cruise planned to an adjacent wine country, and I was to break with the kids. Accomplish abiding, they accept cafeteria at absolutely noon, Valentina said, carefully applying lipstick as if assuming aerial surgery. And Zuri gets bad-humored aback her Amoroso drops, so accept the granola confined I arranged ready. I capital to admonish her that I had already aloft one child, that I knew how to booty affliction of kids, but I'd abstruse that continuing up for myself abandoned, led to best lectures and added subtle put-downs. "We'll apparently be aback about 6, Jay added afterwards attractive up from his phone. "Maybe after if traffic's bad." As they got accessible to leave, I overheard Valentina on the Buzz application, that fake syrupy candied accent she acclimated aback. She anticipation she was actuality clever. "No, we can't do banquet afresh tonight. I'm ashore with the kids." I apperceive it's ridiculous, but it's aloof for a few added days. Assurance me. Already this is all sorted out. We won't accept to accord with this anymore. The Arctic ran bottomward my spine. The way she said already this is all sorted out didn't complete like she was aloof talking about the vacation ending. Afterwards they left. I took the accouchement to the hotel's kids club. The affairs I had created myself to accord families added adaptability during their stay. The counselors were amazing with Zuri and Deshawn, and for the aboriginal time aback we'd arrived, I saw them beam and play with added kids their age. With a few hours to myself, I absolved about the property. It had been years aback I had seen my auberge from a guest's angle instead of an owner's, and I capital to get an absolute feel for how things were going. That's aback I overheard the babble that afflicted everything. Walking accomplished the basin bar. I recognized voices advancing from one of the clandestine cabanas. Jay and Valentina were declared to be at the wineries, but there they were, hidden abaft the curtains, talking in hushed tones with Addition brace I didn't know. "The affair is," Valentina was saying, "she's accepting an old association don't alive forever if you catch my drift." A woman I didn't admit laughed. "Valentina, you're awful." "I'm aloof actuality practical," Valentina responded. "Jay's an only child, so we're activity to get aggregate eventually. The abandoned catechism is, how connected will we accept to wait?" My abdomen dropped. I confused closer, ambuscade abaft a ample approach tree. "And what about Mrs. Renee?" the alien man asked. "Doesn't she accept any money of her own?" Afresh I heard my son's voice. The articulation I had already trusted completely. "My mom? Nah, she's poor as a church mouse. She lives in a little apartment, abrading by unamusing security. I've been allowance her out for years. The lies flowed from his aperture so smoothly, I wondered how connected he had been authoritative them up. I lived in a $5 million penthouse, earning added anniversary ages from my investments than best bodies fabricated in a year. But in Jay's twisted adaptation of the story, I was the accountability he abundantly supported. That's why this cruise is so annoying, Valentina continued. We accept to annoyance her everywhere because she can't afford anything on her own. It's like accepting a affecting pet you can't get rid of. The other woman fabricated a complete of pity. How abominable for you. And I bet she thinks you'll booty affliction of her aback she gets really old and sick. Over my asleep body, Valentina said with an awful laugh. As anon as she needs any absolute care, she's activity beeline into a government-run home. I'm not axis my house into a retirement home for some abortive old woman. I leaned to join the approach timberline to accumulate my balance. They weren't aloof talking about absolution, me die naturally. They were planning to get rid of me the moment I became an inconvenience. But Jay's abutting words were the ones that burst me. The funny thing is, she still thinks she's important, he said, his articulation abounding with atrocious amusement. She tells these crazy belief about owning businesses and actuality successful. It's about sad how delusional she is. Early onset dementia, the alien man asked. Maybe, Jay said. Or maybe she's aloof, desperate to accept she matters. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she alike told the kids she owns hotels. Hotels, can you imagine? They all laughed, and the complete cut through me like shards of glass. Well, Valentina said, at least we won't accept to her crazy belief for abundant longer. I accord her maybe 5 years, 10 at the most, and then we'll assuredly be chargeless to alive our lives afterwards, assuming we care. A abortive old woman who never did annihilation with her life. I stood there abaft that approach tree. Activity my absolute apple collapse. This wasn't a loofah accidental babble about an adverse relative. It was my own son and his wife discussing my death as if it were a long-awaited vacation. The best part, Valentina added, is that she's so beholden for any absorption we accord her. Like this trip. She absolutely thinks we arrive her because we wanted her to come. She has no abstraction. We abandoned brought her forth so she'd watch the kids and we could go accept fun. More laughter, added accidental cruelty. Does she alike accord to expenses, Brenda? The added woman asked. Are you badinage me? Valentina scoffed. She's completely abortive aback it comes to money. Jay covers everything. Her food, her utilities, alike this trip. She's nothing but a banking cesspool on us. Addition lie. For years, I had been helping Jay out financially. Accoutrement allotment of his mortgage, advantageous for his kids' clandestine school. I alike bankrolled Valentina's arcade sprees. The acclaim agenda statements that came to my abode were astronomical, and yet I paid them without complaint. Cerebration, I was acknowledging my family. The abandoned acceptable affair about accepting her around, Jay said, is that she's the appropriate nanny. Chargeless adolescent care, you know. She's so atrocious for our approval. She'll do annihilation, we ask. It's affectionate of funny, actually. It absolutely is, Valentina added, watching her try so hard to accomplish us like her. Bringing the kids big-ticket gifts. She consistently, I stumbled back, my Duke Ariel to my aperture to asphyxiate a sob. The lies were a betrayal. But audition them altercate my life as a abject joke, a accountability to be discarded, was a knife to the heart. This wasn't aloof about money or respect. This was about a complete abridgment of humanity. They weren't aloof demography, my money. They were demography, my abode, and my bequest, and axis it into article animal and worthless. My apperception raced back to that aboriginal night in the lobby. I had been so abounding with abashment that I didn't appetite to betrayal them. I had capital to protect Jay from the embarrassment of his wife's behavior. But now I accomplished he was in on it. He was the one who had made me the base of the joke. He was complicit in my humiliation, and he was accept with it. I had been so appreciative of my accomplishments, so appreciative of the activity I congenital for my family, but they had angry my adamantine assignment into a punchline. I was nothing added than an ATM, a chargeless babysitter, a affecting old woman they couldn't delay to get rid of. I acquainted a new affectionate of acrimony architecture central me. It wasn't the cursory acerbity of the night before. It was a cold, hard, unwavering resolve. The anticipation I was useless. The anticipation I was a joke. I would appearance them what this abortive old woman could do. I would appearance them what it meant to boldness me. I pulled out my buzz and dialed Jasmine's number. She answered on the aboriginal ring. "Ma'am, I'm so animated you called," she said, her voice a mix of abatement and concern. "Is aggregate all right? Did you see?" "It's fine, Jasmine," I said, my voice steady. "I charge you to do article for me." I absolved back to the kids' club and collected Zuri and Deshawn. They about looked up from their screens as I took their hands. "Let's go, kids," I said. "We're activity on an adventure." They looked up at me with annoyed eyes. "Mom said we had to break here." Deshawn said, "Your mom is wrong." I said, "Let's go." I took them to the bank, and for the aboriginal time I put my buzz and wallet down. We congenital beach castles. We ran along the water's bend, and I accomplished them how to acquisition seashells. We laughed, and I told them belief about a back their daddy was a little boy. For a moment it acquainted like a absolute ancestor's vacation, but the ability of what was to appear was a weight in my stomach. That evening, Jay and Valentina returned, ablaze with sun and alcohol. They absolved into my room, accessible to duke off the kids and go to dinner, but I was continuing there, blocking the door. "We're accessible to go out," Valentina said, not alike attractive at me, her eyes on the kids. "You can go to bed." "Oh, I won't be activity to bed aloof yet," I said, my articulation as calm as a summer night. She assuredly looked at me, a beam of affliction in her eyes. "What's that declared to mean?" "It means," I said, "that you charge to alarm the front desk and book yourself a altered allowance for the night. You'll be blockage out in the morning." Jay and Valentina stared at me, their faces an affectation of confusion. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Jay asked. "Don't comedy dumb," I said. "I overheard your little babble at the cabana. I perceive what you've been adage about me." Valentina's face went from abashing to pure fury. "You were eavesdropping on us," she hissed. "You accept no right." "I own this hotel, Valentina," I said, my articulation assent with every word. "I have every appropriate to do what I want, and what I appetite is for you to leave." I pulled a certificate from my purse and handed it to Jay. It was the account of all the banking abutment I had accustomed him over the years. His eyes widened as he looked at the numbers, seeing for the aboriginal time the abounding admeasurement of my generosity. "You've been lying to me?" he asked, his articulation afraid as he looked at his wife. "She's the one lying?" Valentina screamed. "She doesn't own this place. She's aloof, a useless old woman who cleans houses for a living." Aloof then, Jasmine, the front desk manager, came into the allowance with security. "I was told there was a disturbance," she said, her eyes on me, her articulation calm and professional. "Jasmine, acquaint her," Valentina shrieked, pointing at me. "Tell her she doesn't own this place." Jasmine looked at me, and I gave her a baby nod. "Mrs. Renee Carter is not abandoned the buyer of this hotel. Jasmine said she is the sole owner of all 17 of the coastal paradise backdrop beyond the United States. She is our founder, our CEO, and the acumen we are all continuing actuality today." Valentina's face went white. She looked from Jasmine to me, her eyes darting with panic. Jay aloof stood there speechless, the certificate in his hand, a attestation to the lies he had told. "What's the acceptation of this?" Valentina assuredly managed to falter out. "It means," I said, my articulation abounding of ability and resolve, "that you will be checking out in the morning, and you will be advantageous your own way. Every penny you and your bedmate accept spent on this trip, every spa treatment, every meal, every cocktail, it will all be anatomy to your credit card." "You can't do this," Valentina yelled. "Oh, but I can," I said, a baby smile arena on my lips. "And I will." I angry to Jay. "And as for you, my son," I said, "you will no best be accepting my banking support. The mortgage payments stop. The school tuition stops. You're on your own." Jay's face fell. "Mom, please, we can talk about this." There's annihilation to allocution about Jay. I said, "You fabricated your choice. You chose to beam at your own mother's humiliation. You chose to lie about me to your children. You fabricated your bed. Now you accept to lie in it." He and Valentina looked at anniversary other, their faces abounding with a mix of shock and betrayal. They had anticipation, they had me right area, they capital me. But they had underestimated me. They had no abstraction that the abortive old woman they mocked was the one who captivated all the cards. That night, for the aboriginal time in years, I slept soundly. I went to bed alive, I was admired and respected, and every morning, I woke up aflame for the day ahead. It took me far too connected to learn that actuality abandoned isn't the aforementioned as activity lonely, and that sometimes the ancestors you accept is stronger than the one you're built into. Jay and Valentina anticipation, they were teaching me a assignment aback they abashed me in that auberge lobby. They were appropriate about one thing. I did apprentice article that week. I abstruse that I am account angry for. Alike if I have to be the one to do the fighting. and that afflicted everything. The chance we accept told is fictional, but is based on some absolute events. The names and places accept been afflicted to assure the character of those involved. We're not sharing this to canyon judgment, but in the achievement that addition listens and pauses to think. How abounding mothers are suffering in Blackout Central their own homes. I'm so curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you accept to break bashful to accumulate the peace? Or would you cartel to face it all to get your articulation back? I appetite to apperceive what you anticipate, because every chance is a candle that can ablaze the way for addition else. God consistently blesses.